the time of the double-headed serpent stick. It is the time of the red of Orion and Jupiter against the white-blue of Pleiades and Venus. In the year 2012, the Cherokee rattlesnake constellation will take on a different configuration. The snake itself will remain, however, upon the rattlesnake shall be added upon its head feathers. Its eyes will open and glow. Wings spring forth as a winged rattlesnake. It shall have hands and arms, and in its hands shall be a bowl. The bowl will hold blood. Upon its tail of 7 rattles shall be the glowing and movement of Pleiades. The rattlesnake shall become a feathered rattlesnake, of feathered serpent of time untime. Sounds like Quetzalcoatl. And upon the rattlesnake is also the Milky Way. A crossing of the Milky Way shall be seen at these times in 2012, and the Cherokee calendar shall end in the year 2012 with the coming of the Pale One once again, end quote. So, an extraordinary 200-and-some-year-old prophecy. And there's so much, if you actually kind of nitpick this prophecy apart, talking about the coming of the Pale One, and the flying serpent's going to take the form of a man, and in his hand is going to be a bowl, and the bowl is filled with blood. I mean, pretty soon it sounds like you're reading the book of Revelation, right?
That's right, yeah.
And even the numbers, 7, and all the rest of it, it could be, of course, very concerning, and I don't want the whole show to get bogged down, so let me give you just 2 more.
Sure, go ahead, Tom.
Of these, of the things that stood out that then caused me to say, okay, I have to write the book Apollyon Rising 2012 because nobody else has written about this subject matter from this point of view. So then there were 2 more, and these were actually the most extraordinary discoveries that actually caused me to write Apollyon Rising 2012. One was the prophecy from the Zohar concerning the return of the Messiah. Now, why this is important, of course, is that the Zohar is, widely considered to be the most important work of Jewish Kabbalah, magic.
That's right.
It's a collection of books, for those that might not know. It's written in medieval Aramaic over 700 years ago, and basically contains just mystical commentary on the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses, the first 5 books of the Bible, the Torah. But in addition to interpreting the Pentateuch, there is a section in the Zohar called the Vayera section. And it includes a subsection called the signs heralding Mashiach, or the coming of the Messiah. And I had sent out this email to these different Bible scholars, a couple of dozen of them, asking if they knew any connection between the year 2012 and the Great Seal of the United States, and they all were emailing me back saying they knew of no such connection. But my phone rang one day, and on the other end of the line was J.R. Church, a friend of mine. He has since died with cancer, but he was for many years the head of Prophecy in the News, which is a syndicated television program here in the United States. And he called, and he said, Tom, he said, I got your email. I don't know of any connection between the Great Seal of the United States and the year 2012, but he said, did you know that in the Zohar, in the Vayera section, signs heralding Mashiach, when these 700-year-old Jewish Orthodox priests were prophesying when the Messiah would arrive on earth, that they set the date for his coming in the year 2012? And I tell you, you could have heard a pin drop in my office because I had never heard this before.
That's right.
And I had read the Zohar, years earlier.
But it's a pretty short passage, Tom. So it's kind of it doesn't stand out that much actually. It tells a little bit about the year associated with, I think, the birth, the kind of the how the Messiah is supposed to grow up. But according to their calendar, we're talking about the year 5773, right? Isn't that correct?
That's right, and that's another reason, of course, why I read right past it, because my brain wouldn't automatically take their calendar and extrapolate it into our Gregorian calendar.
Yep.
And in fact, 5773 starts in the new moon of this coming year, 2012, which is in September, and extends 1 year into the next year, 2013. And so I told JR, I said, absolutely, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, well, do you have a Zohar, a digital version? I said, yes, and I opened it, and he walked me through verses 476 to 483 in the Zohar to point out what, until that time, nobody had ever pointed out that I know of, and so I'm giving him credit for this, by the way, and that was that the time of Jacob's trouble, the Great Tribulation, is going to commence, according to this ancient text, in the year 2012, when the kings of the earth gather in Rome, and then they're killed by meteoric stones from the sky. So let me read this really short section, because the rabbit hole starts getting deeper here, and this is where this really became fascinating to me. Here's what they prophesied, quote, in the year 73, okay, 2012 to 2013, the kings of the world will assemble in the great city of Rome, and the Holy One will shower on them fire and hail and meteoric stones until they are all destroyed, with the exception of those who will not have yet arrived there. And then it goes on to say, from that time the Messiah will begin to declare himself, end quote. So now, one of the key things that I found really interesting about this 700-year-old Jewish mystical prediction about when the Messiah would arrive in 2012 is that the great city of Rome, according to this prophecy, is destroyed. Something that I was aware of, and in fact, when J.R. Church was reading this prophecy to me, I talked on the phone with him for about 2 hours that day, and I pointed out to him how that this sounded almost identical to the prophecy of the popes, where you have over 800 years ago, in fact, almost 900 years ago, something like 865 years ago, you had a Catholic mystic, Malachi Martin. Pope Innocent II had summoned the bishop, Malachi Martin, to Rome to give an update on his diocese in Armagh, which is located now in what we call Northern Ireland, right? And while he was there, Malachi purportedly experienced this frenzied vision in which he wrote down the descriptives of every pope from his day to the final pope, from Celestine II to the final pope that he called Petrus Romanus, or Romanus, however you want to say that, Peter the Roman. And this is going to be the very next pope following the current one, Benedict XVI. Now, Malachi, though, also seems to indicate that Petrus Romanus is going to come at the same time of Great Tribulation that the Jews in the Zohar refer to, the time of Jacob's trouble, the Great Tribulation, and that he's going to cooperate with the Antichrist for a while. And then it almost sounds like that he's going to be turned against, and Rome's going to be destroyed by the leader of the revived Roman Empire, or by God himself, with all these hailstones or whatever it is that's falling on Rome.
Right.
There's a couple of things that are very interesting here to note. One, Benedict XVI has had threats against his life. He's 85 years old. He's had recent health issues. He's been hinting about stepping down. And this means then that Peter the Roman could fulfill the papacy at any time, if that vision's to be believed. And I believe it enough that, by the way, we are working right now on a top secret project I might talk to you about at some point, called Petrus Romanus, the final pope is here. And this is a major, this will be even bigger than Apollyon Rising 2012. This is a major research project. It involves myself, one other noted theologian. We've hired a private detective. We are soliciting criminal investigation documents from law firms. I mean, this is a major, major project. In fact, we're probably going to come under those those meteoric stones, but they're going to be being lobbed at us from Rome itself, because we intend to even publish documents which are not supposed to be publicly known. These are documents that took us, it was really hard to get them, and they are coupled with legal language that is the most severe threats of lawsuit if these things are published, but we intend to do it anyway. And we'll see what happens. Well, but I almost lost my point. Peter the Roman, according to the prophecy of the popes, will assume authority during a time of great tribulation, and then the prophecy of the Pope says the city of 7 hills will be destroyed, and the terrible and fearsome judge will judge his people. So you have an almost 900-year-old Catholic prophecy that sounds very similar to a 700-year-old Jewish prophecy talking about how the time of Jacob's trouble is going to come, and there's going to be this relationship between a final pope and the Antichrist. Of course, the Zohar says this is when their Messiah is coming, but in Christianity, at least in evangelical Christianity, we accept that because the Orthodox Jews rejected Jesus Christ as the Messiah, they're still looking for a Messiah, and for a while they're going to accept as Messiah the person that we would call the Antichrist.
That's right. It's an interesting relationship there too. And by the way, another thing, a Petrus Romanus or Romanus would at this stage then not be, we wouldn't be able to identify if there is such a man with this name because they changed the names, correct? So there is no, I mean, the Pope Benedict XVI, he was Cardinal Ratzinger before, and he took this name. So we could be looking at a situation where he steps off, he has some health issue, what have you, and a new Pope steps in that takes his name, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That takes a new name or takes his name, and that the idea is, because if you look at the prophecy of the popes, he did not name them by name. He named them by things that would indicate who they were.
Okay.
Like the glory of the olive, and of course Benedict XVI coming from the Olivet order. So, and in that sense, these prophecies have been uncannily accurate. And so Peter the Roman might mean something else that we might not even understand until after the fact. But there could be a Christianized name that would fulfill the meaning behind Petrus Romanus or Peter the Roman. Now, having said that, we have identified 2 individuals, and we are narrowing it down to 1, and there is a monstrous amount of conspiracy around this. Information that is going to come from the cardinals themselves that identify even by name this individual, Peter the Roman. And so we're not saying anything about it yet publicly because, you know, you want to make sure you do a lot of fact-checking in this kind of thing. And but I wished I could talk to you about it right now. I will after the first of the year sometime.
Okay, yeah.
Because some of this is absolutely going to blow people's minds.
Wow. There's something I was thinking about in terms of the popes, because if we do have a crowning, if you will, then I don't know what they call it, of a new pope, then that would be a potential reason why we would have these so-called kings, or, you know, this will be politicians, you know, high up leaders, and of course even kings of a European monarchy, etc., in Rome at that particular time. So that's another interesting aspect to this.
Yeah, that's right. And if Malachi is correct, they're going to get a big surprise when they get there.
That's right, exactly. So that's something to keep an eye on, obviously, and we'll continue to unfold this, because what you've been talking about here is various symbols kind of related to the prophecies around 2012. And why don't we begin to tie in the aspect of what is found on the Great Seal at this point as well, then, because this is another big one. And obviously later I want to ask you about if they're in the know about all of this. This could be obviously kind of a program that is playing out as well, a contextual message, if you will, on an occult level, and therefore we're seeing these prophecies being fulfilled. It's either or, I feel. Either it's really happening because the prophecies about them are real, and it's a supernatural, you know, event that's taking place, or we have an occult elite, Tom, that knows about this, because if they had the knowledge to incorporate this in the Great Seal, for instance, they're going to play on this, or aren't they going to do that? They're going to play this out, basically.
Yeah, and you know, actually, Henrik, that's kind of what I went back and forth. If you read the book Apollyon Rising 2012, I actually juggle those 2 issues. My biggest question, of course, my motivator was there seems to be something unusual here. Why were there disparate societies over thousands of years, separated by time and distance, many of whom we have no historical evidence that they had any capacity for communicating with one another, and yet they were